Hey folks, so this is going to be a video on hyperbolas. The plan is to do 3 separate videos, the first of which is going to be just an introduction to hyperbolas. So a couple things to point out when we have a hyperbola is that, first of all, the center is going to be at HK. You're either going to have a vertical or a horizontal, what we call transverse axis. It's a lot like the major axis back in the ellipse section. Not the same, but similar. And then we also have that c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Back in the ellipse, I called a similar equation little dude, and I will continue to do that. Notice that I have 2 pictures here. One has a horizontal transverse axis, and the second one has a vertical transverse axis. The other way that I'll be talking about that is it going to open up horizontally, or will it open up up and down vertically? So which direction does it open? So a couple of comments that you'll notice here, a couple of things to point out. The transverse axis that you see that I've marked has 5 major values on it. We've got the center value, we have 2 vertices and 2 foci. The conjugate axis is a lot like the minor axis in the ellipse. And the difference here is that if you remember in the ellipse, the major was always longer and the minor axis was always shorter. And that's not going to be the case for the transverse and the conjugate axis. They could be the same size. The transverse might be shorter. The transverse might be longer. So there is no size regulation as far as the transverse and the conjugate axes. All right, notice that we have on our picture here, let me zoom in on this one since I don't have anything written on it. We've got this box in the middle in between the 2 pieces of our hyperbola. I call this the reference rectangle. If you are able to get the reference rectangle, and you're going to be able to get that if you know your A value and your B value. So A's and B's are going to hand you your reference rectangle. If you can get that rectangle, then you'll be able to get your asymptotes. And if you can get your asymptotes, then you are also able to get your hyperbola as far as graphing is concerned. I am going to give you the equations of the asymptotes. Understand, please, that when you go to do your assignments, you will be required on several questions to find the asymptotes. So just be aware that these are the equations that you're going to use for that. If your hyperbola opens up to the right and to the left, so it's got a horizontal transverse axis, then the equation is going to be y equals plus or minus b over a times the quantity x minus h plus k. If I have a vertical transverse axis, my hyperbola opens up and down. It's going to be y equals plus or minus a over b times the quantity x minus h plus k. Very similar to the ellipse, distance A that you see on the picture is going to be from the center to the vertex. Distance B will be from the center to the end of the conjugate axis. This is why I said if you know your A and your B, you're able to get your box. You're able to get your reference rectangle, because you'll notice that the A value goes from the center to, in this case, the top and bottom of the box. In this one, it's to the right and left of the box. And then your B value goes from the center to the end of that conjugate axis. So if you know A and B, you can get your box. Your C value is going to be from the center to the focus. And then just another way to reword exactly the same 3 concepts. Your vertices are always A away from the center. The ends of the conjugate axis are always B away from the center. And the foci are always going to be C away from the center. All right, so I'm gonna stop the video right there. That's just the introduction. I'll come back and do 2 examples on the next video.